We had some trick-or-treaters in our neighborhood. I think you were down with it with the crowds in Clifton there.
Oh yeah, I go down. It's become my annual thing now because, like I
Yes.
said, the whole town celebrates, and I just love it.
I must say you made a very good Abe Lincoln.
Well, you know, I like reading American history, and when I found out that I'm the exact same height as Abe Lincoln, and everybody comes in the store and says, "Wow, I didn't know you're so tall." I am 6'4", but that's why I keep me seated here at the desk here, which was the exact same height as Abe Lincoln.
Wow.
I'm
know
about
that.
20 pounds heavier, but when I saw that, I thought, man, that is my Halloween costume.
That's right. That's great. Well, we've got a great show for you today because it's time to get some chores done, some fall cleanup, and so you've got a lot of great tips for us today.
Yes, exactly. You know, we're talking about cold, and you're talking about snow. I can't believe that. But my bottom line message here is the gardening season is not over.
That's right.
There's still a lot of things that we can be doing in the garden. It's excellent time. I say good time to be planting everything, so we're going to review some planting guidelines. There's also some little maintenance tasks, you know, tidying up, mulching, edging, weeding, the leaves that are coming down.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, you might be thinking it's time that you can curl up inside and just get cozy, but I am here to tell you that's not true. I got a big to-do list for you, so I'm going to keep everybody busy today.
That's right. Get your pen and pencil and paper ready, or your iPad or your whatever, and take notes and
Exactly.
be
And
ready
you
to
can be
roll.
putting together your honey-do list. So if you're down there
you
trying to say, oh, here's things that my husband can be doing this weekend, you can do that. Or like say, if you're enjoy that time outside, then we got lots to keep you busy.
We've had some great, beautiful weather the last few days. It's been great. So, a couple quick announcements. As you know, our fall series of seminars have ended, and we are so appreciative of everybody who came to those. They were a great series. We've got a few more to round out this year. We'll have on the 22nd, I believe it is, we've got 2 decorating seminars, and then on the first Saturday in December we have 2 more. And then, of course, we're getting our seminar schedule for the winter months ready right now, so that'll be out, you know, probably in a few weeks, so be on the lookout for that, but still lots of great information to come. We want to thank everybody who joined us at our dog Halloween costume contest last week. David and I were there. You were judging, I was emceeing, and that was a ton of fun. We brought a couple of pictures along just to share with you. Let's see, I think we have our grand prize winner first.
Yeah, I've decided that's my favorite day at work.
Yes,
Getting to go out there and judge the dogs.
This was a water lily flower. It was just adorable.
What do we have, like 38, 39?
Something like, well, that was
competitors?
entries, but a couple of them were like groups of 3 or groups of 2, and you know, it was just tons of fun.
It's a lot of fun, but you know, it's a lot of pressure trying to pick out which are your favorites or the best.
I know.
And so,
I had the easy job. You guys had the hard job.
But it's a panel of experts,
That's right.
But this one, I mean, as soon as I saw her, I said, okay, I know that's my choice. You know.
And then we had several categories, but our most unique was a Thai beanie baby. And she thought that those were her actual friends there. They were saying in their write-up. And then the scariest, this was really scary. This was a dog sled with the Grim Reaper.
Yeah. Exactly.
That was something.
That's intimidating, isn't it?
Yes, really is.
Yes.
Well, just want to remind you again that the time changes tomorrow, so be sure to set your clocks back an hour. I always look forward to this every year because you get that extra hour of sleep.
Yeah.
I need that extra hour of sleep. So.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that also.
Yep.
That is a highlight.
Yep. And we will be taking your phone calls later in the show, so hope you'll get ready for that. While you got your pencil and paper out, you jot down a question and give us a call later on. It's at the last 20 minutes of the show. So that's all I have for announcements. Anything that you have?
No, so let's get down to business.
Okay,
all right.
Let's do it.
We'll start this. I brought a few pictures in as always because you don't want to be looking at Debbie and I all day. So
Right.
we got some pictures here to kick this off. Let's see where we're starting.
Let's see. We were having a little issue with our pictures, so let's see. Okay. We don't have pictures.
So
let's
we don't
just
have
tell
pictures.
Them about that for those 4 or 5.
So you get the narrative version
That's right.
of it.
You have to look at us. Sorry.
Yeah. But I guess the thing is, I want to say, and we've been talking about this, and everybody's aware of it, is obviously the seasons are changing. We're in one of these transition times. And really, since September 22nd, the equinox, the days get shorter and shorter and shorter. The temperatures start to cool off and everything. And we all know that. I mean, we see this, and we're talking about changing our clocks and so on. And so what we do is we go inside and we turn the lights on, we turn the heat up, and just extend our days that way. But as I'm trying to say, is sort of like think like a plant, or put yourself in the plant's position. Plants have a completely different way that they perceive and respond to these changing seasons. So what will happen is really, ever since the days start getting shorter, the plants start undergoing these changes. And we see this in real dramatic form right now as all the color starts to come out.
Right. Gorgeous.
But what you're really seeing is that this is a process that started weeks ago. The tips of the buds are, they're sensing the shortening of the days. They are producing auxins that start to trigger the plant into going into this dormancy state. There's less production of chlorophyll, and then you start to see the other pigments that are there all the time, the anthocyanins and the carotenoids, and with the green chlorophyll reducing, all these other beautiful, spectacular colors start coming out. And then the plant forms what we call an abscission layer, and the nutrients are being withdrawn out of the leaves, and it starts to shut down. And I go through this just so that you have an appreciation that it's a process, and that the plants have to adapt, and they have to acclimate to their environment. So that we see all that going on, and it's just so exciting to watch. But you'll also see this happen in evergreens. I get the plant clinic, we get flooded with calls right
What's
now.
wrong with my pine tree? What's
Exactly.
wrong with
But what happens is the evergreens, they do shed their leaves now, but they'll hold their leaves usually 2 or 3 years. But now at this time of year, they start to shed their interior leaves or interior branchlets. So that's normal seasonal changes that you see going on. But this doesn't mean it's the end of the season. They're going into a resting state. They're going to a dormancy. And there's still a lot of root growth, and root development continues late in the season until it starts to get really cold. So there's things that we can do in the garden, and that's kind of where I was starting out, saying, hey, this is not the end. This is just they're going into dormancy, a quiescent resting state. It's an excellent time to be planting. And really, I'm going to say planting everything, whether it's trees and shrubs that we see here, or bulbs, or perennials. There's winter annuals, and that's where we're going to really kick off this show today. But I think we're going to take a little break.
We're going to take a little break.
Go into more detail on that.
We've got lots of fall cleanup tips for you today, so stay tuned. Hi everybody, welcome back to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor. We're talking about fall cleanup today. This is the time of year where we have things that we need to do to make our yard ready for the winter months, ready for the spring months, and still enjoy the fall. So David's over at our virtual garden, and he will be there in a minute, but he's got lots of tips for you today. I do want to remind you that we will be taking your phone calls later on in the show. So save those phone call, save your questions up. About the last 20 minutes of the show, we'll be doing that. So are we ready to go over to the Chromie screen? Okay, we're almost ready. David, hang in there. Wait for us. Wait for us. He's got lots of great tips for you today. Okay, well, we'll remind you that our seminars have finished, and we will have some more seminars later on in November. We'll have some decorating seminars, and we will have some both on the 22nd, I believe it is, and on the first Saturday in November. So, okay, do we have? Maybe we need to have David come. Okay, all right, we're getting ready to go to it in just a second, I believe. See you over there, David.
Go to the desk.
Shoot. There we go. David, there you are.
Oh, good morning, Wade. Thanks for hanging with us as we get some of these problems worked out. Like we were just talking about, this is not the end of the gardening season. This is a really great time to be planting. The idea or the advantage to planting right now, there's many of them. With cooler temperatures, there's less stress on you, it's less watering, we tend to have more frequent rainfalls, and again, the roots continue to grow and develop. So what the idea is that planting now, you're getting roots growing in November, December, you're getting roots growing in February and March, and so that development's taking place during this dormant season, and so that's fantastic. Now, the thing I really want to emphasize is I try to let everybody know new plants, you have to pay attention to watering. I don't care if you're planting in the spring, the summer, the fall, the winter. Whenever you're putting a new plant in, you just have to be attentive to the watering, because these new plants, they just have little small root systems with it, and that can dry out faster than it does on established plants. Now, typically, most years we're getting the snow, the sleet, the rainfall, and Mother Nature does provide. But we're saying, hey, every once in a while you need to go out there and check on them. And this is really particularly true with evergreens. You know, most of your deciduous trees and shrubs, they shed their leaves off of there. There's no transpiration. They're not pumping that water through them. But evergreens, because they have that foliage out there, they can dry out. So by all means, I get people coming in the clinic all the time saying, is it too late? Is it too cold? And I'm like, no, the plants are accustomed to this. The plants live out there. They're comfortable with it. So don't hold back on going out there and doing your fall planting. With that in mind, I just want to review real super quick just a couple guidelines to make sure that we get these plants off to a good, healthy start. So my next picture here we'll just go into is, like I said, how I want to actually get the planting done. So this one I'm calling my planting guidelines here. So we're looking at a typical tree, and the things that we want to emphasize is that when you look at a tree, it sort of comes straight down like a pole, and then it starts to flare out. We call this root flare. So when you're planting, this root flare should be visible. You can see right down here where it's a little bit branching out to where that root system, we want to see that at the same level of the soil. And normally, like I said, then we'll have that hole is dug 2 or 3 times the diameter of the root ball. We mix a little compost in there, plant it, and then we're just putting a couple of inches of mulch on there. So I want to emphasize how we're mulching up to, but not over top the stem. And this, like I say, it's important to get these off to a good start. We'll soak it in, do real thorough watering at the time of planting, settle the soil in, and then check on it periodically throughout the rest of the winter months, and just water as needed. And we like to hand water directly on that root ball. So we'll go to our next picture. So we've got this plant in the ground. What I was talking about, this is one of the more common problems that we run into. I talked about the importance of seeing that root flare and where that root flare was visible. On here, this is one you can see from my yardstick. I dug down to the root flare, put that in, and what do we have? Probably 6-7 inches of soil and mulch piled on top of that. That leads to problems because we have that soil and mulch piled up against the stem. The bark starts to get soft. When it gets soft, it allows pathogens to get in there and leads to problems down the road. So we'll just take a continued look at this. So we want to make sure that we have these things set up high. We want to have it mulched up to the root ball, but not actually piled against the stem. Mulch offers us a lot of benefits. There's a lot of good things that we can say about mulch. It forms that insulating blanket over the ground, so it protects the soil from exposure, so it reduces erosion, it reduces runoff, increases the infiltration of water, helps conserve moisture, adds organic to the soil, moderates temperature extremes. So there's all these good benefits to go with mulch. And we've kind of gone mulch crazy with this. This is not even the full selection of what we offer at the Garden Center. We probably have at least a dozen different kinds of mulch, and you can get it dyed mulch that's red or black, and the list goes on and on. But here's the thing, there's no one best mulch. That's why we have all these different ones. It's based on the color, the texture, personal preference, price, so they all do a good job for you. But like anything, we can always overdo it. We can have too much of a good thing. This is an example of what I see too often where we have these mulch volcanoes or mounds. You can see where this is piled up. Where'd the root flare go? I mean, it's disappeared. Just I'd have a detail on this same tree. They put all this nice pretty mulch, beautified it, but I probably have, you know, it could be 6, 7, 8 inches of mulch piled up in there. It's hard to tell. But when we do this, this actually builds up and accumulates, and it prevents the air and the water from infiltrating down into the root system. So the plant responds, it actually starts trying to grow roots up into the soil where it can actually get some air to breathe, and that's where we start to run into these problems. The problems don't show up right away, and that's where I want to look at. This leads to problems down the road. And if we can proceed to the next picture, this shows exactly what happens. If you look closely in here, this is the root flare right down here. That's the original root flare we talked about. mulch and soil got incrementally piled up over this over the years, and now you can see how the plant responds. It starts forming roots coming out from the stem of the plant as it's literally suffocating and trying to get air to breathe. This leads to slow growth in the plants, and then ultimately, slowly, gradually, over years, you can literally see a plant die. So what I brought in this next picture is a example of a euonymus, burning bush, the ones that are all turning fiery red like that we see right now. Customers that come into the plant clinic, they had a hedge of these, and little by little by little, they're dying. We examine them, we look at, there's no insects, there's no disease. We know these plants are vigorous, they got this diminishing growth rate. All the symptoms of problems there, and said, well, you know, it's a problem in the root system, and we're not really going to be able to diagnose it until we go to the removal of it. So this is what happened. This is plants, you can see what we call girdling root, where this root is going around there, choking the plant. These are problems that showed up 15 years later in the landscape, and it really goes back to problems that occurred at the time of planting. So that's sort of my take-home message of this little segment is it's a fantastic time to be planting. We want you to go out and take advantage of it, but we also want you to do it right. That means setting the plants up a little bit high to where that root flare is visible, mulching with 2, maybe 3 inches of mulch, no more, but not piled up against the stem, and then paying close attention to watering, which just literally means doing a good soaking at the time of installation, and then periodically checking it. Maybe check on every couple of weeks throughout the growing season. If you do that, you're going to have beautiful plants and a nice landscape, give you years and years and years of enjoyment. But with that, we're going to have to take a little commercial break. Stick with us. We got more fall planting tips and maintenance tips when we come back.
Get you in the mood for a little fire there, a little chimenea. It's so nice to be out at this time of year, out in the evenings.
Yeah, I was visiting a lot of friends that had the fire pits going last night, and it felt good. It was a little chilly.
It really does. Okay, well, it's leaf time. The leaves are gorgeous out there. I mean, I especially noticed it this week, but they are coming down.
Yes, they are, and so we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do with those leaves, which really are a valuable resource. Like saying, this is a natural sequence that plants do. They do that to conserve moisture and energy as they go into the rest period. But what happens, I'm going back like 25 years ago or something, our landfills were basically reaching capacity, and it caused people to take a closer look at what we were doing with our landfills. And what they're finding really was at this time of year, as we would go into the fall months sometimes, up to 60–65% of the total waste was yard waste going into it. And they said, well, this is ridiculous, So I know, at least in Virginia, they passed a mandate, said, hey, you're not going to be sending these leaves to the landfill anymore, and this yard debris. You got to come up with a better way. So it really initiated a big effort towards recycling and composting. And this is just raw organic matter that can go to very good use in your garden and your landscape. So there's different ways and options that you can manage with this, and that's what we're talking about right here. One is, I'm just going to say, the easiest, simplest way is just mow right over them and leave them where they are.
We do a lot of that.
Yeah. Now you have to use a little measure of common sense. You look at a picture like this and you say, hey, that's perfectly good. When you're grinding them up with your lawnmower, you're increasing the surface area, increasing the decomposition rate, and so they degrade, they break down, they add organic matter in the soil. You can get excessive. I know some people have so many leaves, that they just you can't realistically mow it there. So if you're able to mow it, just leave them in place is a good thing to do with that. If you can really have like a ton of leaves, more than you can really manage this way, then we can talk about composting them.
Right.
Composting is really what's happening both on a big municipal scale or in your home garden. So that's why we're separating, people come and they do the leaf collection and then it might go to a big municipal composting facility. And what they're doing here, and I've got the picture coming up, using basically the same simple processes of composting. It's a biological process. It's really bacteria and fungi, all the microbes that are at work that break down this organic matter that we can use in making mulches and compost and making our gardens thrive. The principles are pretty straightforward. What these bacteria and fungi need to break it down is one is they need air. So in this environment where they're composting on a really big scale, what you're looking at is that's forced air going into these piles, because the microbes have to have oxygen. So they'll monitor all this. They'll monitor the temperature and moisture contents. They'll inject air into the piles. And that's the other. When I say moisture, your compost pile should feel like a damp sponge, not soaking wet, but not bone dry either. So that's something that you'll be monitoring. And then what I talk about when I say a carbon to nitrogen ratio, it's basically you want 1 part green material, which is your nitrogen, 1 part brown material, which is your carbon, because these bacteria and fungi, they need nitrogen for their metabolism, but they use the carbon, which is our leaves, as their food source. They're breaking down, decomposing. So you don't really, to get it compost, you don't want to go with just strictly all leaves. If you can get a mix of leaves and grass clippings and yard waste in there, that's good. And then it also, when I say mass, and there's all, which is the size and time, this is all dictated a little bit by the size of your piles.
Right.
So you're looking at those huge commercial composting things, but my point is the same idea applies to you at home. You don't have to have a bin. You can just put your compost in a pile. If you have a bin, this is great. It makes it easier, makes it tidier, more expedient. You can see, like in the compost bin, where you had 1 part green material and then the other side was the finished material. Those rotator bins people love. This is simply composting in place. Or sometimes they call it sheet composting, where literally the compost, the yard and kitchen scraps and debris are laid down in the garden, a little bit of soil put over it, and it can just compost in place.
Well, that makes a lot of sense when you've got a big amount to do.
Right.
Using the bins, I think would be a little hard to do that way.
Right, and it depends how much space you have in your yard.
Right.
Again, me, I'm like a little townhouse garden. I'm not doing that, but
exactly.
if you got a ton of leaves, there's always ways to deal with this. And the other I want to put out there is, just because we're talking a little bit about composting and building organic matter in the soil and mulching, you really don't like to leave soil exposed. So what a lot of people are doing, this again more at the vegetable garden, is you can put a cover crop over it. This is sometimes called green manure. So what would happen, in this case this is vetch, but a lot of people this time of year I'd be suggesting you're using winter rye or clover. You can seed this over your exposed soil or over your vegetable garden area. You let this plants grow during the winter months, and then next spring you till it back into the soil, so you're literally creating your own compost, your own green manure to go back in. So again, this is an old picture that I use, but you can see I've got sort of my compost bin in the background doing the green manure, tilling in it there. The whole point here is to look at these leaves, look at this yard debris, if I can use that word, to look at it as a resource and find good ways to put it to use, whether it's a mulch, a compost, soil conditioner. It's really a valuable resource.
Right. So basically the essentials for composting: water, air, carbon, nitrogen, mass, and time.
Right.
Okay.
But there's a few things that we don't want to put in there.
Okay.
So I'm glad you reminded me of that. You really, I'm talking about putting kitchen scraps in there, old lettuce leaves and that kind of stuff, banana peels by all means. But what you don't want to be doing is putting any kind of meat or fats or that kind of stuff, because people are concerned about this drawing rodents and drawing wildlife.
Important to think about.
It's really not the kitchen scraps as such as doing, but if you're putting meat and greasy and fats and buttery stuff and that in there, that draws wildlife and it doesn't compost well.
Right. And of course we have bagged compost items if you don't want to go to doing all.
And in reality, that's what I do. This is great, but hey, I'm small garden. I don't have all this waste. So you come into Merrifield Garden Center, and again, you're going to be overwhelmed. We probably have a dozen different kinds of compost: lobster compost, mushroom compost, compost manure. leaf mold blended compost, but that's we're there to help you with all that, help you make those decisions, help you select
Great.
the best one for your garden.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break and come back with some more tips. Stay tuned. Well, we all know that fall is a great time to get your lawn in shape, but there's also weeds to take care of.
Sure, we're going through our checklist and we're always talking about all the fun stuff of planting and edging and mulching, but you know what, there's a lot of stuff you can do also in terms of getting rid of and preventing weeds both in your lawn and your garden. So we're going to start right in with our pictures because I'm going to run out of time. I've been babbling here. This is just a lawn picture, but a lot of the weeds that you might see coming up in there is predominantly crabgrass that's in there. A lot of what you see in there, those are what are called summer annual weeds. So they just grow during the summertime. You get a couple frosts on them, you know, a little bit of freezing temperatures, and those weeds are going to be dead.
Right.
So a lot of this comes down to identifying the weeds, and of course we can help you with that at plant clinics. But if it's just the summer annual weeds like crabgrass and Lespedeza and spurge, you know, I'm saying don't worry about that. Those are going to be dead any day now, you know, once we get a good freeze on them. So they're dead and they're out of there. But the concern is right behind them are what I call the winter weeds, and I've got some examples of that. So already, if you look at that big circle in my chart, these winter weeds have already started sprouting. They started growing back in September, but they start growing in September, October, November. They're sprouting now, and they're just those little seedlings, but they love the cool temperatures. They love the winter time. They go through the winter, and next spring they start popping up in your yard, and you see the chickweed, the bittercress, the dead nettle, the henbit. And so, you know, March and April rolls around and you're saying, well, where the heck did these things come from? Well, they came from seeds that are germinating now. So one of the things that we can do is take steps now to try to stop these guys from showing up next spring. So I brought in a couple examples of weed preventers that you could put down. And I'm going to say this is a little bit late. It's something that I wish you had done a month ago, but I'm kind of in the school of thought saying, hey, I'd rather be late than never.
Right.
So if you have a history of seeing these winter weeds, then you want to get either like this, the Gallery broadleaf weed preventer down, or the Preen. You want to do this as soon as possible because every day counts. The Gallery can be used both in lawn and landscape beds. So if you have these weeds showing up in your garden bed or your lawn, you can put the Gallery down. If we're talking about just your landscape beds, then that's what this Preen garden weed preventer is. So bottom line is, take some steps now to get rid of those things. Now, those prevent weeds. They don't actually kill them.
Out of the way.
If you have these things, and this again is a lawn weed killer, this is not for use in garden beds, but if you're trying to get rid of these little seedlings and perennial weeds in your lawn, you can use Speed Zone. This will work at temperatures as low as 50 degrees. So you do need to watch your weather forecast. If you're trying to control these weeds now with something like Speed Zone, that it needs to be during dry weather. Check to see that there's no rain in the forecast, and also we have temperatures that are above 50 degrees during that time of application. So I think it might be a little chilly or rainy today, you know, but just watch your forecast and you'll have the opportunity to do that.
Okay.
Now the
fertilize.
Exactly. We want to take advantage again of the fall season, and it is a good time to be fertilizing. So this is going to be for both your lawn and your trees. Like Debbie had mentioned, fall is our lawn season. So if you have not reseeded your lawn, or if you still have bare spots out there for some reason, again, this is something that I call your prime time is sort of September 1 to October 15. But this October 15 to mid-November, if you need to do some seeding, you can still do that, but you want to do it now. So get your seeding done. It's time to get your fall fertilization going on that, because we do want to continue fertilizing your lawn 2 or even up to 3 times during the fall. So we have a couple of custom blended fertilizers. The Merrifield Select is a starter food. So if you're doing your seeding or repairing, then we're going to apply the Merrifield Select. If it's just an established lawn or you're following up on your maintenance, you're going to use that Merrifield Premium. So again, looking at the recommendations, 1 application of fertilizer is the bare minimum. That's the low range. 2 is our medium range, and 3 is the high end. So you can fertilize your lawn usually right up to early mid-December. So try to get your second or application down or get going on that. Now this is also a good time of year to be fertilizing trees and shrubs. As we talked about, even though you see them going dormant and you see the top of the plant going into its resting state, those roots continue growing and developing until the soil temperatures get way low. So we've got another 6 weeks at least of root development ahead. So you can be fertilizing now to encourage the roots, and you'll see benefit from this next spring. We have custom blended the 2 different fertilizers that you saw there in this screen. We use the Merrifield flowering plant food you see right now for anything that blooms. I don't care whether it's annuals, perennials, trees, shrubs, but this could be anywhere from dogwoods to azaleas to spirea. If you want to promote good flowering, that's where we use basically what I call the red bag. If you're more into just nice vegetative growth, which could be evergreens or oaks or hollies, shade trees, then we would use the Merrifield tree and shrub food.
Okay. And of course, you all are there at the plant information desk to guide you every step of the way.
Yeah, and it gets confusing, but that's where we try to simplify it and say if it's flowers, use the red bag. If it's nice leaves, use the green bag, because a lot of these companies come out and they have 9 different kinds of fertilizer, and I think it just gets overwhelming.
It does.
But like I said, but that's why we're there to help with that.
Right, great. All right, well, you've got your to-do list, and you may have some questions. So when we come back, we'll like to talk to you about those, 703-387-1046. We'll see you in just a couple of minutes. Welcome back. We're taking your phone calls during the next 2 segments, 703-387-1046. David, before we get to our phone calls, I have people who have said to me, now it's too late to plant, right? Could you address that, please?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, we get that question every day.
Yeah.
Well, and that's really because I guess we're just thinking about our own comfort or something, because I'm saying, no, the plants, they live out there. They're comfortable. They're adapted to, and it's actually a very good time because you get a lot of that root development. But also, if you need to transplant, lift, or divide, for pretty much anything, this is a good time. Now, the one exception, I'm going to say that there's some plants that we know are tender, and we saw a lot of winter damage last year. It was so severe. So if you have some of these really, what I call temperamental plants, if you're growing certain like the gardenias and camellias and stuff like that, I'm okay planting them, but I really don't want to actually transplant those, because when you dig them out of the ground, you're damaging the little fine roots, and stuff like that. So if it's a real marginal plant, maybe we take it easy on that, but everything else, I got people who've been dividing peonies and lifting those, so whether it's perennials, trees, shrubs, bulbs, lawns, yes, go for it.
And on the subject of planting, wintertime planting, people think that you can't plant in the winter as well, but depending on the temperatures.
We'll go right until the ground freezes.
Right.
When it gets too hard to put a shovel in the ground, then you stop.
Absolutely. Okay. We do have our first caller on the phone, so let's talk to Nancy, who's calling from Arlington. Hi, Nancy.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning.
I'm good. Thank you. I have 2 questions. Hopefully they're quick.
Okay.
My first one is, you mentioned putting down weed preventer. I've already kind of tilled my yard and put down seed and fertilizer. When can I put down the weed killer?
Very good question. I'm glad you asked, because I forgot to be clear on that. You're correct. You cannot do weed treatment at the same time as seeding, and you really can't put any kind of weed preventer, weed killer on that lawn until your new grass has been mowed at least 3 times. So Nancy, that probably means next spring for you. But just you'll follow your normal mowing routine. After its 3rd cut, then we can start treating it like an established lawn.
And my second quick question is, when I weed, do I have to pull the weeds from the roots, or can I just pull the weeds?
Well, that really depends case-by-case basis, and there's so many, it's difficult to give an easy answer. If it's a perennial weed, a perennial weed, has this permanent established root system that each year comes back bigger and stronger than the year before. So those are the ones that we really have to work hard to get the roots and everything on it. So that could be anything from like Bermuda grass to violets to dandelions, list goes on. If it's an annual weed, if I use crabgrass as an example, it's not so important because those roots are going to die.
Oh, and they don't go as deep either.
No, they don't. And that's one of the easy ways you can tell. If you're pulling weeds and they're just easily coming up out of the ground, that's probably an annual weed that doesn't have that permanent root system. If it's tough and it's putting up a fight, then you've probably got a perennial weed on your hand.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks for the call.
You too, thanks. Okay, let's see. Melissa is calling from McLean. Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. I love your show.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
My question is, I plant fruit trees, and almost every sunny spot in my yard I have a fruit tree. About 4 years ago, I put in an apple, a plum, and a peach. And the apple and plum are wildly successful. The peach tree still just looks like a stick almost, and it produced 3 peaches 2 years ago, just 1 peach last year. And I've heard maybe I planted it too deep, that peach trees need to be elevated a bit more. Is there anything I can do after the fact?
Well, I think that's exactly what I'm concerned with. I was going to talk about the planting is I would get in there, get a little hand trowel and start pulling back the soil, the mulch and everything around the base of the tree. And you need to find where that root flare is, when it comes right down, and then you'll see where the roots start to develop.
Okay.
Okay. If that root flare is an inch or 2 below ground, then you can just sort of start raking back and pulling off the surface mulch and soil. If you dig in there and you start to find that root flare is 4, 5, 6 inches deep in the ground, then this winter, while it's dormant, you can start at the same time. You literally need to dig that tree up and replant it at the proper depth.
Okay. So I can dig it up and redo it. Someone told me it needs to be elevated, like on a little hill with sandy soil, like its own hill. Should I dig it up that much, or I mean, that seems to contradict?
Well, there's a little, one of these little, we have these little sayings in the industry. We say, "Oh, plant it high, it'll never die." That's true with our heavy clay soils. A lot of times we'll actually elevate the tree a little bit just to really assure ourselves that we didn't get too deep. But your real mark is as long as that root flare, as long as that's exposed, as long as that's at the soil line, that's sort of the perfect place. But if there's any doubt in your mind, you are always a little better off having it slightly elevated.
Having it higher. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, good luck with that.
Have a great weekend. Okay, we have a caller who's calling from West Virginia. Are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hi, how are you? I'm sorry, what was your name?
Debbie.
Debbie. I like that name.
How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing real good, thank you. We bought the property and built a house on it up here, and I've been slowly trying to get things into the ground. And I planted some blueberry bushes. I've got my pear trees and plum trees and stuff, and even my roses. And I got them in the ground. I planted them exactly like I was supposed to, as far as the height level and the whole 9 yards, and the mulch, keeping it away from the tree bark. My problem is Japanese beetles. Those guys came in and just gobbled my plants. I mean, my rose bushes, you would see the rose open and it would be gone in 2 hours. My blueberries, I mean, they were like stripped. My trees were stripped. Now, they did, after the Japanese beetle season was over, my rose bush looks like sticks, but my trees did come back with the leaves. And so I feel good that, it's going to make it through the winter and the whole bit. But next year, I mean, my God, these Japanese beetles are like insane.
Well, let me get
Do you have a quick answer, or do we want to put her on hold till
Well, I'm going to make this quick, and this is bad news for you, because I'm expecting another big outbreak of Japanese beetles next year, because we had so much moisture this summer that almost assures us we're going to have a big population next year. There's nothing you can do about this other than when they come out, usually in July, you're going to have to be spraying your plants to keep the beetles off of them. If you're looking for an organic option, particularly with your trees and the fruit trees, you might use neem oil, N-E-E-M. So neem oil, helps, but it's not as effective as doing something like either 7 or 8, which are both broad spectrum insecticides. But unfortunately, that's all I can tell you is your plants will recover, they'll be coming back, but the beetles will be coming back, and that's just for about a month. You'll have to be on a spraying program.
Thanks, Debbie.
Yeah, and you spray them like every day, every other day?
No, probably about once every 5 to 7 days. But they're only around for about a month, and that's a part of gardening.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the call. We got to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, David, let's see if we can get a couple more callers in before we run out of time. Katrin is calling from Arlington. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Great.
That's great.
What can we do for you?
I have a fig tree that I lost a mother plant during the harsh winter last winter, and there are some sprouts coming up from the roots. I want to know if this is a good time for me to transplant these sprouts.
Well, and as I was saying, I'm trying to say, hey, it's a good time to lift, divide, transplant and everything, but there are exceptions, and figs are going to be one of those because it's a little bit marginal in its cold hardiness. I think it would be better if you're able to, let's get through the really cold months of January and February, and then do your transplanting and dividing more towards March. Now, if that's not possible, if you're saying, hey, because you're moving and you want to take the plant with you or something like that, then I would say you can do it now, but you really want to make sure you give that extra protection during the winter.
Okay, sir. I appreciate it.
Yeah, if you can put it off till March, put it off, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You have a great weekend. Okay, let's see. Our next caller is Diane, who's calling from Prince Frederick, Maryland. Hi, Diane.
How are you?
Hey, great.
Yeah,
How are you?
we're doing fine. Good morning.
What can we do for you?
I have a star jasmine that my son bought me at Mother's Day this past year.
Nice.
And actually, it's a double. It's the stems, I guess, are braided. But I'm just wondering how would I overwinter it? I don't want to lose it because it's gorgeous. It's got a pink bloom and a white bloom also.
Oh, that sounds
that's
beautiful.
intertwined, and it's just gorgeous.
Yeah. Let me. I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're gonna run out of time here in just a second. Let me say that the jasmine's not the easiest plant to grow. It's definitely a tropical plant. It needs to come inside. It should be inside already. And it really likes as bright and sunny a location as you can possibly provide. And that's the biggest struggle. Most of the people I talk with is they're trying to grow the plant in low light levels. To keep it pretty, keep it nice, you need as much sun as you can provide. If you don't have a sunny environment, then you need to invest in some plant light to keep on there and keep that plant light on like 12 to 14 hours a day.
Okay.
But bright, warm conditions, and then you want to keep it evenly moist, not soaking wet, not bone dry. But if you provide the right environment, it'll keep blooming for you all winter long, and the fragrance is phenomenal, and they're beautiful.
Oh, fantastic.
It's such a fabulous plant. It's worth putting that effort into it.
You have a good son.
It really is. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, good luck with that.
Have a great weekend. Okay, do we have any more callers? We have one more caller. Raymond from Hyattsville. Are you there, Raymond?
I'm still here?
We've just got about a minute and a half. Do you have a quick question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. I have just wanted to review what you said about using leaves as mulch.
Yes.
I'm using a system this year that vacuums up the leaves and mulches them, and the result of that I can take and put under shrubs and flower beds and around trees, correct?
Yes, you can. It's a very good use of them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's my question.
I would say, probably want to keep it no more than about 3 inches depth at maximum, but they break down, they add nutrients to soil, they help insulate the roots. It's a very good use for them.
Super. Good thinking. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Okay, great show. Lots of good tips. Putting everybody to work.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, that's why I want to say that the season's not over. It's just one of those transition times.
That's right. And we're especially getting into bulb season too. So it's time to get those bulbs picked out and in the ground because they are going to be great. Next week we're going to be talking about some little fall magic, right?
Yep. Michael Fay is going to be with us. A lot of you know him from working at the Fair Oaks location, and he's got some beautiful, beautiful trees and shrubs to brighten up the fall season.
Yeah, he did a seminar. You may have gotten to the seminar last week or two, I guess. He did that. So this will be kind of a continuation of that. So David's going back to the store. Stop by Fair Oaks, say hello, and come out and see us at Merrifield Garden Center. We've got everything you need to not only clean up, but to plant for fall. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.